A single prompt, 50,000 lines of code, and the end result is an impressive Call of Duty game with no external assets used. Everything you're looking at was generated by Opus 5 with a prompt about 4 sentences long. This prompt has now been called the Gauntlet Loop, showcased by Matt Shumer, and yes, it will burn through your entire subscription and tokens, but it has the model show some really cool behavior. I actually ran it myself and spent about $1,000, so let's find out if the final product is worth it. So this all started from a tweet from Matt when Opus 5 was first released. He showcased a first-person shooter game with a mini-map working in the corner, player movement, sliding, damage, all of that seemed to work, and everything was claimed to be generated only by Claude. This was obviously met with a lot of skepticism at first, and then he actually published the prompt that he used, and people started to run it on their own, and realized that Opus 5 is actually pretty good at this type of work. So quickly, a lot more examples showed up. There's this karting game with some genuinely impressive models and quite a cool environment, and it seems pretty functional from my small testing. There was also this pastel version of Nuketown, and everything seems to be working, and this would probably be a fun game for 5 or 10 minutes. There was also this one called Descent, which has some really impressive graphics that were all made from Opus 5, like the background mountain looks really good for a model-generated asset, but I've not been able to actually play this game besides what's happening with the character here. You can view and play all of these demos on Matt's site, I'll leave it linked down below, and I know these aren't AAA games or probably anywhere near bug-free, but for a first pass, they're incredibly impressive, and it's pretty cool to be able to create your own friend swap games that you'll probably only play for 15 minutes and throw them away, and this would have been so cool to me as a kid. I actually had to learn Java back in my day so I could mod Minecraft. Now you can just prompt what you want into existence, as long as you have a Claude subscription on the max plan, so maybe not great for kids. So what is the prompt that yields such great success? What is the Gauntlet Loop? Well, originally before it had a name, the prompt that made the Call of Duty game was these few lines. This prompt gives a lead agent 2 things, a goal and a real-world target, in this case being Call of Duty. After this, you then ask it to use sub-agents, where each agent can loop over a small piece of the overall game, and has a flow where it codes, and then that goes to a harsh critic, which actually looks at the screenshots, and the feedback from that critic is then fed back to the original agent, looping until the critic thinks it's perfect. This will literally keep going until the sub-agents reach the limit of what they can do, and for me personally, it looped for 19 hours until I stepped in myself and stopped it. Now that was the original prompt that Matt used, but now the Gauntlet Loop actually has a meta prompt. You pass this to an agent and ask it to make the final prompt for you. When I ran my test, I actually only had that original prompt, so I simply modified mine, asking for a Formula 1 game instead of Call of Duty, and that is the only change that I made from the original prompt. So let's take a look at what Claude did. First, it actually created its own tools to go through the game frame by frame and get screenshots from multiple camera angles to pass it to the critic step, and then it started a workflow with 30 agents and 5 phases. One agent works on the foundation to write the core engine, and then 15 of them work on systems, building things like the environment, the models, and the camera effects. The third step is then integrate, so one agent takes all of the output of those agents and just ensures that it all works well together, and then this can be passed to the critic agents, which is described as 5 harsh art directors, looking at things like silhouettes, materials, lighting, world density, and motion, and it says here that the critics want a score of 90 or more, meaning that it's indistinguishable from the original game that I asked for. Any issues that these critics find up until that point are then passed back to the start, and this loops over and over. As an example of this, I actually got to round 5 on mine, and we can see that the critics broke this scoring into car, world, and motion, and round on round, the score is improving. I actually stopped Claude at round 5 here as I ran out of my subscription and also time, but it reached a final overall score of 67.3, and Claude actually told me itself that this goal may be a little unrealistic and that the scores would plateau in the 70s anyways. Now, I won't go into this entire thread as it actually took 19 hours, but along the way, the model did actually showcase some really cool behavior, building its own mini harness. It made 3 permanent tools, one to actually screenshot the game while running, one to extract information about the running game like shadow map state, the lighting and whether it casts, per mesh shadow count, sun elevation and material types, then also a tool to compare 2 screenshots between rounds and ensure there would be no regressions. Alongside these, it also made 136 single-purpose tools. This was things like a road material A/B testing tool between runs, and also a play tool so it could actually drive the car through a scripted input sequence. I just think it's super impressive how these models built their own little harness, and in total, it used over 2,000 screenshots. Overall, by the time I stopped this, it was up to $1,200 in usage, and as I said earlier, that took 19 hours, and it used 1.7 billion tokens across 137 agents. So the big question now is, did we actually get a good game from this? Well, this is the final result. It called itself Apex GP, and I've got to say, just from the background here alone, these models do look pretty impressive. We have 4 features. We have a quick race, we can do a full race weekend, we can do a time trial, and then we also have the settings. In here we have things like the camera, the heads-up display, as well as the difficulty level that we're on. Now, I'm not going to do a full race weekend. We'll take a look at what a quick race is, but these all have the same setup menus anyway. You can see we can select our driver on our cars here, and it seemingly used some real drivers. I'm going to go ahead and select Norris. We can choose a different livery here. I'm going to choose Heritage. We can't choose a circuit, it only has one. We can choose some weather, we can choose the difficulty here, as well as the race distance and also the starting grid. I'm just going to go ahead and jump in though and take a look at the graphics. Now, a little bit of jank there where all of the cars started together, but you can see it's actually driving this for me on the formation lap. I'm not controlling this at the moment, so I assume at some point I'm going to take over, maybe when we get to the grid, but I've got to say, these graphics are pretty impressive. I am super impressed with the model of an F1 car that is generated here. This actually looks really good. It's definitely better than I could do by hand. I have sort of no experience in 3GS modeling, and even the road textures and all of the people at the side looks pretty impressive for a 3GS game. This is actually kind of blowing my mind at how good this looked. I saw a few of the screenshots as it was going, but I haven't seen the final result yet. Now, it appears that we lined up on the grid here, although I'm definitely out of my grid spot, but the race is about to start. And I can take over the controls a bit, but it is doing a lot of the steering for me. And also, the steering is very sensitive, so literally pressing one key here moves me the entire way across the track. But we can see that the leaderboard up here is working. We have our mini-map working down here. That's some really nice sort of graphics down here where we have the sparks coming off the car. That's a really cool, nice feature. We've got shadows working. Motion blur's probably a bit too much, and also controlling the car is a little bit difficult. I'm doing a fairly good job. And let's see, okay, when I crash, I do go through the barriers, so that definitely needs work. And now I'm just going to let the car take over and do its own driving, because I've caused a major crash here. This is definitely a safety car situation. I've gone ahead and restarted that race, as I want to see what a few of these other camera angles look like. So if we go into the settings, we can choose the cockpit one. How well does this look? This looks okay. Needs a little bit of work maybe on the steering, although we do have a steering wheel. And the halo is a bit lower than it actually is in real life. We go ahead and change these settings again. We can go to the halo view, which is just a little bit higher. We've also got the TV view, which is pretty cinematic, although I couldn't race from this, I suppose. But you can see these cars do look fairly good. Obviously not perfect F1 cars, but again, for something generated entirely by Opus 5, I think that's pretty impressive. Now, this is obviously a bit of a bug. I think we're now inside a building in that TV mode, so let's go ahead and change this to, let's say, a wide angle. Although, again, this is going to be pretty undrivable from an actual usable, playable point of view, but it's still pretty cool that it added this in. Now, it looks like I might be out of line here, but the rest of the cars do actually line up on the grid, which is nice. And again, it has tried to copy some of the real F1 liveries. So we have Mercedes at the front there, or maybe Aston Martin. And I could also see a few Ferraris back there. And it looks like there may have been a major crash on the start line. Now, I've jumped into a time trial here just to see what it looks like under heavy rain conditions. And it's definitely not perfect. The environment just looks overall cloudy and a bit too grey. But the spray coming off the cars does look okay. Again, definitely not a perfect situation, but we do have some puddles on the road as well. It's done a pretty good job from a single prompt. Now, I'm going to go ahead and actually try and finish a race here, but I did just notice at the top that we did get a penalty for jumping the start, and we actually get some track limits when I go off the track as well, which is super cool, and I'm definitely going to get a penalty for track limits as well. But I also want to finish the race and see what happens then. So this is the final lap now, and I should be crossing the line. I did finish first, but I have a lot of penalties, so I'm curious how it's going to take that into account. And also, we have a podium. It seems like nothing happens when you cross the line. It just keeps going. I thought you'd have to wait for everyone to cross the line, but even then, it's just still playing the game, and we're actually doing extra laps here. So I don't think it implemented any sort of finishing screen or a podium. Overall, I'm pretty damn impressed with the results that we got back here. At the moment, I'm just leaving this on the TV view. Normally, when I run this, I get really blocky looking cars, but these actually look pretty good, and I can see that this is supposed to be an F1 car, and the same goes for the track and the environment. It's done pretty well on all of those things for something that's entirely generated from Opus 5 with no external assets. Would I play this game for more than 5 minutes? Absolutely not in its current state, but I think a few more prompts and I could get it into a bit more of a working state with working barriers and maybe some better handling. It's definitely a lot better than I could do in 24 hours myself. So would I ever make my money back on that game? Well, no, but luckily this was all on a subscription, so it was kind of free, and I uploaded all of the code that this generated to a GitHub repo if you actually want to run this and give it a go, but I personally haven't looked at a single line of the actual game code here. It was just a fun experiment, and I'm super impressed with the results that we got from the models that it generated. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below, or either subscribe, and as always, see you in the next one.